Following the fatal shooting of 37-year-old Alex Pretti by federal immigration agents in Minneapolis last Saturday, Democrats have taken a stand against the Trump administration's immigration policy. Senate Democrats are refusing to advance a must-pass appropriations package if it includes funding for the Department of Homeland Security. Hello and welcome to USA Today's The Excerpt. I'm Dana Taylor. Joining me now to discuss the possibility of another partial government shutdown is USA Today congressional reporter Zach Schermele. It's good to speak to you, Zach.
You too, Dana.
Zach, Thursday afternoon saw a failed Senate vote on passing a previously agreed upon funding deal. What happened there?
All Democrats and 7 Republicans in the Senate failed to advance what was originally bipartisan funding package that included 6 of the federal government's 12 annual appropriations bills. So essentially, as you noted, ever since the killing over the weekend of Alex Pretti, 37-year-old ICU nurse in Minneapolis, Senate Democrats have been extremely united over their concerns regarding the Trump administration's immigration enforcement surge in Minneapolis, and just point blank said to Senate Republicans and to the White House, we are not going to advance this funding package despite having negotiated over it for months if there is not an agreement to strip out a bill that would fund the Department of Homeland Security, which includes Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, and Border Patrol. We need that to be stripped out of the broader funding package, and we'll fund the rest of the government, but we want to buy some time to negotiate over our concerns related to immigration. The deadline for passing all of Congress's appropriations bills is the end of the day today. After the vote, the White House and Senate Democrats did come to a deal. They said that they are going to move forward with taking out the Department of Homeland Security funding bill. They're going to pass instead a short-term measure for that agency to buy them some time to continue on with negotiations about reform there while moving forward with the rest of their appropriations bills. This doesn't, though, avert necessarily a partial government shutdown, because there are just a lot of logistical hurdles that now have to happen, namely that the legislation has to go back to the House of Representatives, which is out. So we could see a partial shutdown, even a short one, over the coming days.
You said prior to the fatal shooting of Alex Pretti, Democrats had been signaling they wanted to avoid a partial government shutdown. Zach, you wrote that the previously agreed upon legislation included some notable reversals of some of President Donald Trump's steepest cuts. Tell me about some of those provisions.
It's really interesting, Dana. We have seen lawmakers in this Congress make some notable headway with respect to pushing back both Republicans and Democrats on some of the infringement, frankly, that the executive branch has engaged in with respect to their spending authority, right? So Russ Vought and the Office of Management and Budget and many federal agencies have, in so many instances over the course of President Trump's second term back in the White House, essentially decided with respect to all sorts of government programs that they were going to stop those programs for the foreseeable future for whatever reason. And that has rankled, even quietly, some congressional Republicans. And so this spending package includes a lot of reversals to those cuts. It's a big win for Democrats, and a big win for Republicans like Senator Susan Collins of Maine, the chair of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate, who's very supportive of a lot of federal programs that for a long time have been bipartisan. So there's support for those funding measures in these appropriations bills. And that's really a rebuke of a lot of the cuts to spending that the Trump administration has proceeded with.
Is the current threat of a partial government shutdown really about DHS funding, Zach, or is it about lawmakers running out of ways to force accountability regarding immigration enforcement that's led to the death of 2 Americans?
Yeah, this is another chapter really in the story of what happens when you have one party fully in power in Washington. The Democrats do not have a lot of political levers to pull in Washington these days when they're frustrated about a particular policy that the White House, especially, moves forward with. And we've seen that on various fronts, but I think immigration most notably. And, as we learned over the course of the last federal government shutdown, Democrats have increasingly become willing to utilize this particular lever, which, you could argue is sort of their most powerful one in Washington right now, to try and force the Trump administration's hand and congressional Republicans to shift course with respect to some of these things.
If Democrats are successful here, will ICE be forced to shut down even temporarily?
So that's part of what congressional Republicans say is kind of the irony of this whole debate over the past week or so here. ICE received a lot of money in the president's One Big Beautiful Bill Act that passed last year. It was $75 billion over the course of the next several years. And so they have more money on hand than they have had, and they are going to be able to rely on those funds to continue operations, regardless of whether the government shuts down.
Which Democratic lawmakers have been most vocal on this issue?
It's been interesting to watch which Democrats in the Senate that previously were a lot more wary of government shutdowns decide in the course of a couple of hours, even on the day of Alex Pretti's killing, when that video was circulating all across the internet, showing Border Patrol agents taking his gun and then fatally shooting him. These lawmakers decided very quickly and got in line with the rest of the Senate Democratic caucus that they were going to withhold their votes over this funding package. I'm thinking in particular of Senator Angus King of Maine, an independent who caucuses with the Democrats, who said, I don't like shutdowns, but, ICE cannot continue to operate and Border Patrol cannot continue to operate in this way. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto of Nevada said something similar. Both of them were yes votes on avoiding a government shutdown for much of the last crisis.
And how have Republicans responded?
It's interesting actually to see Republicans responding to this incident with respect to Alex Pretti in a way that differs from the White House and from the highest levels of the executive branch. In the hours immediately following the incident, we saw, accusations from the Department of Homeland Security that Alex Pretti was a domestic terrorist. There was criticism, even from the president, that Pretti was carrying a gun, which he had a permit to conceal and carry. And so that has, enraged Second Amendment groups that are aligned with Republicans in Congress who are concerned and want a full investigation into this incident. And I think that is part of the reason why the White House and GOP leaders in Congress have demonstrated more of a willingness to negotiate with Senate Democrats about how to move forward here.
Zach, how much are the looming midterm elections shaping this standoff?
I have to think about once more Susan Collins, that Republican senator from Maine, who is, I think, in perhaps one of the most challenging situations of this entire controversy. So that I think demonstrates some of the difficult positions that Republican senators are being put in. She is the chairwoman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. She's also a representative of Maine, which is the latest state that is being targeted by an immigration enforcement surge. And she's running for reelection. And, so she's having to balance all of those considerations in a way that I think is making her more amenable to working with Democrats on this. And she certainly was saying as much in the hours in the immediate aftermath of Pretty's killing. And Democrats also want to show that immigration is an issue that they can win on in November. And it's been fascinating to see just how animating the response to Pretti's killing has been across the country for the Democratic base.
Are there any other major sticking points to work out to keep the government from partially shutting down?
Yeah, conservative hardliners are not happy about what they see as wasteful spending in a lot of the appropriations bills. Remember, the appropriations bills reinstate and, in fact, even go further in funding many programs and agencies that the Trump administration has already tried to cut. And so, there are going to be some hardliners that try and vote against funding package no matter what. But usually these appropriations bills are pretty bipartisan. So the way to overcome some of that opposition from more conservatives in the House and in the Senate is to get more Democrats on board, which I think is what the plan is for congressional leadership right now.
Zach, of course, the most recent government shutdown wasn't that long ago. I feel like we were just talking about it. That shutdown went on for 43 days, finally ending on November 12th of last year. Let's turn now to the impact on Americans. What will we be looking at in terms of government furloughs and federal employees working without pay?
Right. So, as I said, this will be a partial shutdown, not a full shutdown, because 6 of the 12 annual appropriations bills have already been passed. So, that means that there are certain portions of the federal government that are going to continue operating, unlike what happened last fall. That was a full shutdown. So, U.S. Capitol Police, elements of the legislative branch, Capitol Hill staffers, they're going to continue to be paid. The National Park Service is not going to experience the same types of disruptions. But, the TSA, right, the agency that is responsible for overseeing air traffic control in this country, is part of the Department of Homeland Security. So once we see a partial shutdown, if it is prolonged, and we could see those same sorts of flight disruptions and cancellations and delays that became so widespread last fall. So there will be some pain points, but it's going to be more measured, the impact.
Well, I have to ask, with a partial government shutdown, should Americans expect to see similar interruptions like we saw last fall in programs like SNAP?
SNAP is another really important piece of all this, as we learned last fall. But importantly, the Agriculture Department has been funded already. That was part of the deal to avert the last government shutdown. So we are not going to be seeing the same sorts of disruptions and issues with respect to SNAP funding if there was a partial shutdown. Of course, when it comes to this shutdown and any others, the longer that it goes on, the more hurtful it is to lots of Americans.
What's the bottom line here, Zach? Are signs pointing to another prolonged, even partial government shutdown? And what are you hearing from the Trump administration on this?
I think things can change in Washington very quickly, obviously, and certainly in Trump 2.0. But what is clear to me at this point, the main difference between this shutdown and the last one is that there is already a willingness on the part of Republican lawmakers in the White House to try and address some of Democrats' concerns here. And President Donald Trump has been adamant about not wanting another shutdown. And so I think that if we see one, it probably won't be as long as the last, that record-breaking crisis, but it is still a very notable political moment that we are once again having to have this conversation not very long after being involved in that historic crisis. It's just a testament to the inability of Washington to get things done without really playing hardball right now.
Zach Schermele is a USA Today congressional reporter. Thank you so much for your insights here, Zach.
Thanks, Dana.
Thanks for watching. I'm Dana Taylor. I'll see you next time.